It is Monday, March 13th, 3:56 p.m. if you're watching us live. We're in Central Time Zone. It's been a little bit over a week since I've seen you guys. Hopefully, you guys have been holding up all right. Crypto market cap sitting right now at $1.074 trillion. Or, sorry, uh, wait, I'm stupid. Hold on. Yeah, $1.07 trillion. Bitcoin dominance 43.6%. We have seen some selling off going on here in the past few days. Bitcoin right now sitting at 24.2, ETH at 1671, BNB at 307, Cardano at 34 cents, Matic $1.18, Solana at $20. Can see Dow Jones Industrial Average has had a relatively red day for the most part. We did see some green, but it seems to be that we are losing momentum once again. So I think we are going to be heading lower. Bitcoin has faced some downside sell pressure here in what's it called? The past few days with the whole debacle happening over at Silicon Valley Bank. Going to get a little bit more into that here not too far from now. Bitcoin daily chart. We can see that we have had 3 consecutive green days. Could this be a sign of things to come? Are we going to be heading higher, or is this just a fake out before we inevitably go lower? Personally, I think it is the latter, but it's important to note that DXY seems to be trending downwards a little bit right now, trying to find its footing for the time being. We'll see how that plays out. Headed over to Twitter for some news. U.S. Congressman Warren Davidson was quoted as saying, "Anyone attacking self custody, one pertaining to crypto, is against individual freedom." Wholeheartedly agree with that statement. Commodity CFTC chair says Ethereum is a commodity, despite Gary Gensler, the SEC chair, saying that Bitcoin is the only commodity as of right now in the crypto space. So we'll see how this develops. Personally, I'm kind of a Bitcoin maxi at the moment. I'm not shitting on Ethereum, but I think Bitcoin is much better in many regards. But just my personal opinion, not financial advice. Here we have U.S. government law enforcement transferred 49,000 Bitcoin seized from Silk Road crime proceeds to Coinbase. Could there potentially be another sell-off occurring on the horizon? Government liquidating their Bitcoin on Coinbase, and you think SEC Gov is going to end them? Yeah, very unlikely. Paul Krugman, his quote is saying back in 2015, exactly what is Bitcoin supposed to be doing that we don't already mostly do? Well, Sabathius replied and said, Paul Krugman, one of the problems Bitcoin fixes that you didn't address is that it has a predictable monetary policy and fixed supply, making better store value over long time horizons. I also encourage you to look outside of the first world and do some reading on how Bitcoin is a much better alternative for escaping/surviving economic turmoil and hyperinflation. Third world, and especially countries like Nigeria, Lebanon, Turkey, Argentina, etc., as we discussed many times on this channel. While here in the United States, we are complaining about 6 to 7% inflation. The countries that this individual listed, we're talking double-digit inflation year after year in countries like this. So you can see how Bitcoin is a great store of value. It's a great hedge against inflation, especially in countries where hyperinflation occurs. But I thought I'd share that tweet. Here we have the South Dakota governor vetoing the pro CBDC bill that excluded Bitcoin from the definition of money over in the state of South Dakota. So that's great development. Glad she vetoed it. She did the right thing in this instance, but we'll see how that language is interpreted/construed across many other states here in the United States. Dylan LeClaire posted this about a week ago almost. Silvergate Capital shut down operations and liquidate the bank. So here we have just another potential player in the industry going under. Could this be a sign of things to come? And again, domino effect, think big picture. We have President Biden calling to double capital gains tax from 20 to 40%. Interesting development. Biden to also propose new tax rules for Bitcoin, removing the ability to tax loss harvest, according to Wall Street Journal. We'll see how that develops. Magoo PhD's take on the whole matter is Biden wanting to increase the capital gains tax to 40% because he knows they, in parentheses, the Federal Reserve, are going to print so hard this decade and they want a slice of the asset appreciation. Hashtag Bitcoin. So essentially, why wouldn't you increase the tax percentage for capital gains if you know that inevitably the Federal Reserve is going to print a crap ton of money, which is going to make these assets like Bitcoin run up in value? So interesting take from Magoo PhD. That's why I thought I'd share that. U.S. bank regulators seize Silicon Valley Bank and largest bank failure since the Great Recession back in 2008, 2009. It's a pretty big development. This took place over on Friday. To be honest, I was kind of oblivious to this. I was on vacation. I didn't really hear about it until I was on the way back from my vacation the next day. But again, kind of interesting development. Here's the quote unquote crash explained. Silicon Valley Bank, number 16 largest bank, or 16th largest bank, U.S. bank, with $212 billion, just crashed 60% in one day and fell 22% post close. The stock's now halted. Bill Ackman is calling for a U.S. government bailout. Peter Thiel is calling bank run. J.P. Morgan, BAC, WFC, Bank. I'm assuming that's Bank of America, and then Wells Fargo all dropped 6%. What's next? Is this a Lehman moment or something that's being overblown? Are depositors screwed or just equity investors? And what do the terms AFS, HTM, NII, and FDIC insurance actually mean? Here's a thread on that. I'm not going to go through the gist of it, but pretty interesting to see banks having liquidity issues, more or less. They have all these things on their balance sheet that they essentially can cover for, and they have all these users funds, within the bank. And if a bank run occurs, these banks will be more or less forced to either pause withdrawals, like we saw happen over in Celsius, Voyager, etc., or they will be forced to sell off assets to make up the difference and give money back to the customers of the bank. It's important to note that Circle, the issuer of the stablecoin USDC, what is believed to be the United States digital dollar moving forward, or the CBDC, did crash because of Circle's exposure to Silicon Valley Bank, or SVB. And it's important to note that it dropped roughly like 12 cents. This is rather significant, you guys. I mean, if you look at USDC on CoinMarketCap, it is the 5th largest cryptocurrency by market cap. And the thing is with stable coins is they are not supposed to deviate from $1 very, very much. Maybe like a hundredth of a penny or something like that, but not much more or less than that. So kind of concerning. But it's important to note that it has recovered more or less from its low that established over the weekend. Biggest reason Silicon Valley Bank collapses, they invested customer deposits and treasury bonds, which are very sensitive to interest rates, which have been hiked up massively over the last year due to inflation. Biden inflation equals the largest bank collapse since 2008. I believe Silicon Valley Bank going under makes it the second biggest bank to go under in U.S. history. Just putting things into perspective, that's pretty massive deal. Interesting how 15 years, there's more or less history repeating itself. We're seeing the same story kind of unfold. Back on March 10th of 2008, there were concerns over Bear Stearns, which send U.S. stocks lower. Fast forward 15 years to just 3 days ago, Silicon Valley Bank fails after run on deposits. Pretty crazy stuff. Here we have customers lining up outside of SVB at its Menlo Park, California branch. People want their money. They need to get it out for whatever reason, maybe to pay bills, maybe to send family members across the world some money. Silicon Valley Bank chief administrative officer served as Lehman Brothers CFO prior to joining the bank. Interesting how an individual involved with Lehman Brothers doing business / working for SIVB. Kind of interesting. Make of that what you will. Conspiracy theorists like myself would hypothecate that maybe uh, maybe you shouldn't have someone from a previous organization that went under involved in your business. Maybe there's writing on the wall, maybe there isn't, but not a good look nonetheless. USDC stablecoin, which is or was fast on the path to becoming US CBDC, doesn't have your dollars anymore. They lent them to a bank that lent them to the government. They went up in flames. So just to show you how invested Circle was with SVB, Circle put out this tweet saying Silicon Valley Bank is one of our 6 banking partners. Circle uses for managing the about 25% portion of USDC reserves held in cash, while we wait clarity on how the FDIC receivership of SPV will impact its depositors. Circle and USDC continue to operate normally. Here we have Elon Musk saying he's open to the idea of Twitter potentially buying Silicon Valley Bank. So there's that. What would you think if Elon Musk actually went through with that deal? I think a lot of people would claim that he's a man for even considering that. And here we have High Impact Flicks saying, "Don't worry about your money. Everything is fine. The experts say to keep in the banks. What could possibly go wrong? The banks are fine. Listen to the experts." Here you have Jim Cramer telling you that you should keep your money in the bank, even though everything from history tells you otherwise. Don't trust the banks, just like you wouldn't trust crypto. Don't keep more in the bank than you can afford to lose, just like crypto. And that's what's comical about all of this is that just past 6 to 12 months, everyone and their mother was saying crypto's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme. Meanwhile, we're seeing issues with banks across the nation here in the United States. So there's that. SEC protected people by making them sell their BUSD and converting into USDC before bank run. Thanks, SEC. Helpful as ever. Yeah, gotta love the SEC. FTX funds are liquid. If everyone would truth their balance, they won't have enough to pay out their customers. Meanwhile, banks look nervously onwards in the corner. Janet Yellen's warning the U.S. House of an economic collapse. I feel bad for those who are fooled by Joe Biden, who still to this day brags about how strong the economy is. Hope you were all preparing. And that's the thing. Who do you believe? Do you believe the Treasury, or do you believe the standing president? The standing president has an incentive to make the economy look like it's better than it really is. So then they win re-election. Meanwhile, the Treasury has to do what the Treasury has to do. Yes, the Treasury wants to be reelected and such, or stay involved with the Treasury, but they inevitably have to uh, say things they don't want to. Fed on the brink of an infinite bailout for banks. Bitcoin was made for this. This time we're ready. And that's the thing. When the money printer goes burr, you guys, it will send assets like Bitcoin. That's not to say crypto as a whole, but it will send the crypto market skyrocketing. Just your yearly reminder that at the FDIC has only about $125 billion worth of assets while insuring over $9 trillion in deposits. And they call crypto a scam. Again, be careful with how much money you're keeping at the bank. So all the money in the bank is really an unsecured liability. Yeah, pretty much. Here we have Wells Fargo customers reporting their direct deposits and scheduled payments were missing from their online accounts this morning. As we can see, this user did share that this was happening with Wells Fargo, and the timing of all this is very interesting. This is right as a lot of people were trying to get their money out of USDC, maybe potentially get their money out of SVB. Overall, just not great timing. So it's more or less a precautionary tale to not keep so much of your assets locked up in a bank. I'm going to play this clip.
Kushner, Mr. President, I rise again, I'm afraid, to make the same old hoary speech that I've been making here for several years. And that is, it is my opinion that you do not really understand the concept of banking. All the banks are broke. Bank Santander, Deutsche Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, they're all broke. And why are they broke? It isn't an act of God. It isn't some sort of tsunami. They're broke because we have a system called fractional reserve banking, which means that banks can lend money that they don't actually have. It's a criminal scandal, and it's been going on for too long. To add to that problem, you have moral hazard, a very significant moral hazard from the political sphere. And most of the problem starts in politics and central banks, which are part of the same political system. We have counterfeiting, sometimes called quantitative easing, but counterfeiting by any other name. The artificial printing of money, which if any ordinary person did, they'd go to prison for a very long time. And yet governments and central banks do it all the time. Central banks repress the amount of interest that rates are, so we don't have the real cost of money. And yet we blame the real retail banks for manipulating LIBOR. The sheer effrontery of this is quite astonishing. It's central banks that manipulate interest rates, Commissioner. And plus, underneath all this, we talk loosely, in a rather cavalier fashion, do we not, about deposit guarantees. So when banks go broke through their own incompetence and chicanery, the taxpayer picks up the tab. It's theft from the taxpayer. And until we start sending bankers, and I include central bankers and politicians, to prison for this outrage, it will continue.
I love how heated / passionate he gets about it, because it is rather absurd that essentially something that you or I would go to jail for, if we ever did. These bankers are able to take on bigger and bigger risks and essentially face no repercussions, so they never learn their lesson. Um, and unfortunately, the taxpayer has to pay for those mistakes that they didn't make themselves. So make of that what you will. I hate that that's the reality that we find ourselves in, but there's that. What illegitimate manipulators. Carlson's team says the January 6th committee added audio to silence CCTV footage, inserting screams and other crowd mayhem sounds to make it seem more ominous, make it seem like there's more danger, more violence going on. on January 6th. Here we have Chuck Schumer, piece of shit politician, saying Rupert Murdoch has a special obligation to stop Tucker Carlson from going on tonight and from letting him go on again and again and again because our democracy depends on it. Or does it really possibly put you in the crosshairs of a lot of angry constituents who will call you a liar, just like you and many of your politician buddies are. You guys lied about January 6th being an extremely violent insurrection, hence why you're pushing the divisive narrative that January 6th is even remotely comparable to 9/11 or Pearl Harbor. It's absolutely disgusting that you guys would say such a thing. I'm not going to act like the people that stormed the Capitol were all peaceful. There were people who definitely made very, very stupid decisions, and they weren't acting so peacefully. But to say that everyone involved was an insurrectionist, a white supremacist is just gross. Here we have McConnell saying it was a mistake for Fox News to depict January 6th in a way that's completely at variance with what our chief law enforcement official here at the Capitol thinks. Oh, boo-hoo, McConnell. Cry me a river, buddy. You gotta love that you're rocking the Ukrainian tie with those colors. You're repping Ukraine. And again, he's part of the establishment just like this asshole, so they're going to push that narrative essentially for more alphabet agencies to be created, so that way things like January 6th don't happen, even though FBI clearly knew that there was going to be some sort of insurrection, yet they did not take proper procedures or protocols. So there's that. Here with Elon Musk saying free Jacob Chansley. This is a censor video re-emerging of Jacob Chansley reading Trump's tweet telling protesters to go home and remain peaceful. Of course, you won't see this footage on CNN because it counters the establishment narrative. Jimmy Dore says while you scream about Russia invading Ukraine, remember United States illegally invaded Syria and is currently occupying a third of the country. What part of Syria? The part with oil. America is the world's biggest terror organization. Here we have the Pope saying conflict in imperial interest, not just the Russian Empire, but of empires from elsewhere. So we officially have the Pope saying that Russia is not to entirely blame for the war in Ukraine. It is is being fueled by the imperial interests of not only the Russian Empire but also the NATO Empire, or you could simplify it to the UK's empire or the United States Empire, etc. I'm glad the Pope's calling it out for what it is. Here we have Peter Sweden saying tomorrow. This is on March 10th. So 2 days ago, farmers were planning the biggest demonstration yet. Netherlands is planning on forcing 3,000 farmers to sell their land to the state, a land grab essentially. 100,000 people are expected to show up. Peter Sweden claims that he was on the way there. The reality is, if there's no farmers, that means there will be no food. Go Dutch farmers. And here we have German water cannons have been spotted on the highways to The Hague, where the farmers' protests will be held tomorrow. Earlier this week, the mayor announced he might deploy army trucks. This is what the right to protest looks like right now in our liberal democracy. Hashtag Dutch farmers. So, yeah, it's crazy how the military water cannons will be used to essentially stomp out peaceful protests in opposition to these big name farms owning more and more farmland, meaning they will have more and more of a say as to what prices you will pay at the store for a given item of food, whether it be a dozen of eggs, a gallon of milk, whatever it may be. Dutch farmers have officially arrived in Brussels. Their livelihoods are on the line because of restrictions enforced by their own government and technocrats, yet magnificently they continue to hold their line. So props to the Dutch farmers. Netherlands military is arriving to face off against the farmers. The army against the farmers is the army against all people. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty, which is a quote from one of the United States founding fathers, one of the writers of the Constitution, Thomas Jefferson. Here we have bold tweet from Elon Musk on ESG. Many are thinking the global ESG agenda with valid reasoning. What do you think? He says the S in ESG stands for satanic. If you know anything about ESG, it is about stripping privileges and liberties from more or less the middle and the lower classes of society. And essentially, as long as you're rich enough, you can do anything you want. And it's all in the name of saving the environment. And this gentleman right here, Leonardo DiCaprio, is very much in line with thinking, just like many of his celebrity friends. Bit of an eco-hypocrite. Leo, private jet loving DiCaprio, heads to Green Fashion Awards in LA after traveling 12,000 miles in just 2 weeks to chase models in Europe. Gotta love the hypocrisy. Here we have Dr. Redfield, former director of the CDC, talks about 3 suspicious events took place at the Wuhan lab in September of 2019. In September 2019, 3 things happened in that lab. One is they deleted the sequences, highly irregular. Researchers don't like to do that. The second thing is they changed the command and control from civilian to military, highly unusual. Third, which is very telling, is they let a contractor redo the ventilation system in the laboratory. Clearly, there was a strong evidence that a significant event happened in that laboratory in September. So, a lot of people based off of this are speculating that coronavirus or C-19 had been circulating around the world as early as October of 2019. It just wasn't publicized or basically told to the public until late February, sometime in March, and then that's when we saw things. That's when we more or less saw the shit hit the fan. Between people hoarding and buying up as much toilet paper as they can, etc. People wearing ridiculous outfits to stop the spread, whatever it may be. It's all coming out. Dr. Redfield's also acknowledging what Fauci really did on record. I'm not going to play this because I guarantee you some of this audio will essentially flag my video. Maybe I get a second strike, meaning I can't stream for you guys for 2 weeks. Here we have Thomas Massie discussing the Pfizer board member Scott Gottlieb's role in censoring tweets about natural immunity. He says my tweets on natural immunity were censored. Why is this important? This is 3 days after the military mandate came out and a week before the federal mandates came out. This truth was toxic to a narrative that Pfizer was spreading that Biden wanted out there so he could force the medical procedure on everybody, whether you had natural immunity or not. You can see why this is an issue. Again, they're not following the science, even though they're telling us to follow the science. Here we have Robert F. Kennedy saying the media is an extension of the pharmaceutical industry. 75% of advertising revenue now on the mainstream media are now coming from big pharma. The ratio is even higher for the evening news. Anderson Cooper has a $1 million a year annual salary. Well, $10 million of that is coming from Pfizer. So his boss is not CNN. His boss is Pfizer. And again, we can see why this is an issue because essentially they're spreading out medical misinformation just for some money, just for some compensation. German newspaper Spiegel admits to failing as the fourth estate during corona pandemic coverage. Too few disagreed. Dictator in Us was quite strong. and I agree with that sentiment. I fell for the shenanigans the first about first 3 4 weeks of C19 circulating around the world. After that, I started putting two and two together, realizing things weren't adding up. Things we were being told was not being seen in everyday life. So there's that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's stream. Sorry it's a bit long. I had to more or less catch you guys up to speed, and as well as catch myself up to speed what's been going on recently. But if you guys found today's video slash stream educational, informative, entertaining, any of the above, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends and family. Until tomorrow, guys, please take care and invest wisely. I'll see you guys all tomorrow, 9:15, 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time.